On the International Women's Day of 2013, I was still recovering from a defeat in a social enterprise competition. One of the judges told me not to waste time on this idealistic idea of empowering women through photography. He said it's not going to work and I should move on. Well, it wasn't the first time that that people say, you know, your ideas are too idealistic. I've been through that before. And usually I just discount my ideas and I move on to other things. But this time it was different. I felt that as I was finishing my university studies, I just suddenly realized how many opportunities I was given, and I felt it was my responsibility to give back to society. And among all the problems in the world, one of the problems that really pained me was that 2/3 of the world's illiterate population are women. And being a woman myself and having no problems accessing education, I felt that I needed to be doing something that could help more than 500 million women and girls at least be able to express their thoughts even if they cannot read and write. And that was the idea, to train these illiterate women and girls, mostly from developing countries, a new skill, and that is photography, because photography transcends language barriers. That was the idea that I started in March 2013, but I was finding that what could pursue me to continue, even if the judge told me not to continue. So I was just, you know, like most teenagers, just looking at Facebook, scrolling down my newsfeed, and I saw this picture posted by a women's rights organization. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I really remember this image because it was a turning point in my life, how I saw social change happen. In most competitions, there are only one or a few winners. In the competition I was part of, there were more than 300 submissions, then there were 30 semi-finalists, 6 finalists, and finally 2 winners. The chance of success is less than 1%. But I somehow just assumed that I needed to win in order to bring the idea to life. This image told me that no, winning is not the best way or the only way to get to a destination. And losing in the competition actually made me question myself how dedicated I was to this idea and to the cause of women's empowerment, and how I can work together with other people feeling the same way. As a social enterprise, we now provide free photography training and cameras to women and girls, to the most vulnerable women in the world, mostly from developing countries. Women and girls who struggle to read and write have a free channel to express themselves and be able to share their thoughts and feelings with the world. We then sell the pictures taken by them, and 50% of the revenue will go back to them. And for those who are burdened by care responsibilities, this is actually a great way to earn extra income on the side through freelance photography. And ultimately, we want to create a world where women and girls have economic and emotional independence and the access to the same opportunities as men and boys in their communities. So that was the vision 2.5 years ago, and we're still working on it day by day. From a team of 2 in Hong Kong, we're now 40 volunteers across 11 countries. But most importantly, we're working with 200 women from Indonesia, the Philippines, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. And these are disadvantaged women whose voices are rarely, if ever, heard. They are not reported on news. You don't hear them in international development organizations. It's really the real life stories of these women. And they show us that they are actually not passive beneficiaries of aid or victims in any sense. If you see the pictures taken by them like this one, they show us that they are actually agents of change themselves. One of the stories that I want to share is Anik Kumalasari. She's 32 years old from East Java, Indonesia. She came to Hong Kong as a domestic worker because she had to help out her family back home. She, having grown up in a village, she loves the nature, and that's how she actually picked up photography. She wanted to take pictures of the flowers and the trees that she sees in the very green space, the very limited green space that we have in Hong Kong. And she's been learning photography with us for 1.5 years, and last month she sold a picture on our online platform. This picture is titled, "I Believe I Can Fly." To accompany this picture, she wrote a description in Bahasa Indonesia that, "Let us hang on to our dreams. Even if we fail, we'll have fallen onto the brighter stars." And by we, she's actually referring to her two best friends, Esti Maria and Risna. You see them on this picture, and they met through our organization. They always went on photo walks together, and they joined hands to produce the annual exhibition in August in Hong Kong. So Annick, as I told you, she loves landscape photography, whereas Risna in the middle, she loves abstract photography, and Esti Maria loves street photography. They like different things, but they learn so much from one another, how they can improve with their different skill sets, and really learning from each other, complementing their strengths and weaknesses is at the heart of our philosophy, and that is to collaborate. Collaboration, I learn from them, but I think it's very hard to come by these days. But if you remember that first image I showed you, how we started, it's thinking again that if we want to go far, go together. And I think the stories of Annick, her two best friends, show us how far we can go if we support each other in that journey. So I was a business student, and I started this social enterprise. And actually, when I started, I naively imagined that, oh, the charity world will be so much better than the business world. No one will be competing with each other. Everyone's really nice and wanting to change the world. That was my idea. But then I realized actually it's not true. And it's not to blame it on the charity sector, but it's just that resources are so hard to come by. And that when I started out, I had to join so many competitions with less than 1% chance of success. So I've been thinking to myself a lot, how can we create change without being competitive? Are there other ways of creating change? And this question I've been reflecting in the past 2 years, and I want to share my thoughts with you, but also to challenge you to think of whether there are alternative ways to create change. If we use our example of our organization, we can imagine the outcomes to the world through broadly 3 different ways of creating social change. The first one, direct intervention. The second, system strengthening. And third, informing and inspiring others to deliver. So direct intervention is what we've been doing in the past 2 years, teaching each individual women their photography skills and then sell their pictures. But after doing this for 2 years on a very micro scale, we realized that our impact is so limited. So what can we be doing differently? And it is really to move towards the 2 other ways of creating change on a more systemic level. So for system strengthening, what we realize is we should be working actively with grassroots organizations, mostly based in developing countries, to help them deliver this program on the ground. We soon realized that, of course, we don't have the money, unlike Oxfam, to set up few offices all over the world. And actually, we don't want to. There's so many amazing grassroots organizations out there that need that extra capacity to be doing so much more. And also, for programs to be truly sustainable, they need to be based in the community, and they need to be based in the values of the people on the ground. And this is why our partnerships team works very closely with grassroots organizations in locations that we operate, but also constantly finding new ones that we can help them, provide them with the access to equipment like cameras and laptops, and also the access to a global audience like here today. And the third way, even broader level, is informing and inspiring others to deliver. And in our example, first we realize we don't have the research or the evidence base to inform others. So what we do is, instead of continuing to conduct photography training, we take a step back and we look at what we've been doing for the past 2 years, and we spent 6 months working on a photography manual. It's like a dissertation, it's 60 pages, very heavy reading. But what we wanted to do is to disseminate the knowledge of our experience in conducting photography training and in measuring our impact. And we can disseminate the knowledge to our on-the-ground partners or even partners beyond our reach. And the other thing that we try to do is also to inspire the corporate sector to get involved. So we work very closely with galleries and stock photo agencies to set up sales channels for these women for the photos that they take. And we also partner with electronics companies to collect second-hand digital cameras. So these are just some examples in illustrating how limited one organization's impact is, and that's inevitable, but we need to be actively thinking how we make that change on a broader level by working with other people. But I guess the question is, of course, collaboration sounds good, but the question is, why do social enterprises in particular need to collaborate more than the corporate sector? And I think the reason really comes down to the nature of social enterprises. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the concept, but let me just revisit the definition by Professor Muhammad Yunus, arguably the most authoritative voice in the sector. He defines social enterprises as organizations created and designed to solve social and environmental problems and are financially self-sustainable. I was first attracted to this sector because I was a business student wanting to give back to society. So, social enterprise seemed to make perfect sense for me. But then learning more about it, I realized that the potential of the sector is not what it can do on its own, but what it can give to other sectors. So to the business sector, I think social enterprises challenge us to rethink the kind of capitalism that has led to the scale of wealth inequality we see today. To the charity sector, it is to think of new ways to generate income so that charities can move away from relying on grants and donations and to actually assume more autonomy over the work that they do. And finally, to the public sector, it is to make social innovation a core part of public policy. But the biggest challenge of social enterprises is that the sector is very, very small. This is just a picture to show kind of how change can happen to some of our beneficiaries in Bangladesh. But back to the problem of social enterprise, that the sector is very small. I just was looking up some statistics to put it into context. In the UK, the social enterprise sector employs around 1 million people, and that amounts to roughly 3% of the UK's workforce. But compare that to the public sector, which employs 25% of the UK workforce, and the private sector, which employs even way more, 72% of the UK workforce. So if social enterprises keep on just thinking how we can build our own organizations, it would take a very, very long time for us to achieve change that leaves the world away from the business as usual. But I think in order to get there, there's still a very huge stumbling block. Every social enterprise can be thinking about putting collaboration at the top of their agenda, but still the biggest problem is what I observed, the phenomenon of hero-preneurship. This is a picture taken by one of our schoolgirls in Pakistan of her male classmate, and I guess it also portrays the very traditional gender dynamics, or gender norms rather, in Pakistan. But hero-preneurship is, I guess, a phenomenon whereby social entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs broadly are singled out for their individual achievements. It makes people very competitive in order to prove that they are best in the sector. And I have to say, I am part of perpetuating this problem too, that I've been kind of just going for all sort of different competitions in order to prove that our organization is better than others. But this doesn't cultivate this group of entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs to be thinking how we work with each other. And it's particularly, I guess the phenomenon of hero-preneurship exists everywhere, in every sector. But in the social sector, what's dangerous is that it makes people not willing to collaborate. And to my final point, the phenomenon of hero-preneurship, the greatest danger of that is actually losing sense of what you set out to do, losing your original purpose. So I was joining a lot of different competitions across the world, and in every competition, the first question that came to my mind was, how do I prove that my idea is better than others? It's a very obvious question to ask if you want to win in a competition, but it's definitely the very wrong question to ask or to direct your efforts in creating social change. The question I think we should be asking is, how do I prove that my idea is best suited to the needs of our beneficiaries? We need to keep on asking ourselves that question because it will lead us to think about our original purpose. And if we think about our original purpose, we'll be able to do the right thing. And for me, that is at least to collaborate. The myth of social change is that individuals and organizations can do it alone. But when I think about, again, that image that inspired me to undertake this journey, I'm reminded what it truly takes to create change. Fundamentally, there's a difference between changing my world and changing our world. And I hope that all of us here can be changing our world together. Thank you.